Thanks for taking the time, everybody. Ms. Hackett?
Yes.
The floor is yours, please.
My name is Shalonda Curtis-Hackett, and my family and I have been impacted by the weaponization of ACS. On June 8th, I received a call from a woman stating someone called the anonymous line and reported my family. She would not tell me what I was being reported for, but I had to comply, or I could have the police knocking at my door. After repeatedly telling her, I don't know you, if this is real, and that I wouldn't be consenting to anything unless I knew what I was being accused of, she finally told me a person reported my family of child endangerment and malnourishment. In that call, she asked me if I thought anyone would be doing this maliciously, and the only place I could think that it would come from was a staff member at PS 147, my children's elementary school. She stated the person said my two youngest children are skinny, their cheeks are sunken in and hollow, and their bones were sticking out. She was able to give my full address and told me it was only for my two younger children, even though I have an older child. Who would have access to this information? With the threat of the police, I consented, and I'm here to tell you the Miranda Rights and Child Welfare and Confidential Reporting bills need to pass, as it will support families who are the subject of malicious intent at the hands of the New York City Department of Education. I was an active parent, PTA president, SOT co-chair, District 14 president, council president. My husband was the Title I rep, and none of that mattered to the staff members at PS 147. They wanted to silence me, maintain power, harm my family, and ACS gave them the avenue to do it violently with no consequences for their lives. The DOE and PS 147 principal used me as an active and engaged parent, but discarded me and my family after rightfully questioning the assistant principal's per session's amount of $45,000 to $50,000 for 6 years or more, $45,000 of which was received during the school closure during the pandemic. Uncovering the shortfalls of the budget, curriculum, advocating against anti-blackness, homophobia, and transphobia in the school. I was advocating for the true meaning of respect for all, and I was attacked for it. The principal lied to me, lied to parents, forcefully represented herself as an advocate for families and children, and pitted a whole community against each other. I requested a meeting with the then superintendent and the principal to discuss my children's safety. On June 2nd, I told her how she abandoned my family and other families and put us in direct harm for retaliation. My husband and I both told them that they needed to tell the truth, as my children's direct safety is at risk, as well as my personal safety in the community, by not addressing the violence. In February, when a parent passed around an anti-black and transphobic flyer, which my child's teacher agreed with and was disciplined for, they put us in direct harm. We told them we were not going to be pushed out of the school. My children were remote 100% of the time during the pandemic, but on that day, we took them to the school. That was the only time anyone at PS 147 saw them in person. There was no coincidence that after that meeting, I received an ACS call on June 8th. No one cared about the welfare of my children or for support or food if they really were concerned for their safety. With 18 days left to the school year, they ran to ACS because they knew their lives would be taken as fact. They could freely, violently attack my family with no consequences. On June 21st, I, along with other parent advocates, met with the chancellor, the deputy chancellor, executive superintendent, FACE, the new acting D14 superintendent, along with the director of LGBTQ programming, to finally address the violence and racism in our district. All are aware of what happened to me, and yet nothing has been done by the DOE to support my family and families like mine beyond the safety transfer. That is not enough. My family was the only one to receive a case. Why? The difference between myself, and other families that were advocating is that I'm black. No one saw the humanity in me or my children. Despite this meeting, reporting to OSI, I have not received a follow-up since that meeting in June. How can the DOE be trusted to investigate itself? Anonymous reporting is an unjust practice that is used maliciously to harm parents and families. Anonymous reporting is weaponized against black and brown families at an alarming rate. I would never let a stranger in my home and talk to my children, let alone during a global pandemic and exposing them to COVID. There were no checks and balances. My family was guilty and had to prove our innocence. No one fact-checked the person who called, and they are emboldened to continue this violent behavior. This is not about the safety of children. This is about power and control. The impact of this violent practice outweighs the intent of what anonymous reporting is supposed to do. It is no secret staff members and administrators use ACS as police to control families. There are countless other families who have to deal with this constant violence. I have PTSD behind this, and I know plenty of other mothers who have had their children kidnapped under false allegations. CARES is not the solution. It only perpetuates the issues. Caseworkers don't tell you your rights. On that phone call, she told me if I did not consent to CARES, the police would be sent to my home. The process is invasive, checking our cabinets, our fridge, our living arrangements, questioning our lifestyle. We have been parents for 14 years, and we have never been subjected to violence of this magnitude. My husband is a classically trained chef with degrees of his own, and none of that mattered. Although the case was closed and my family's livelihood was put into jeopardy, we were at the beck and call of ACS. I didn't leave CARES, the CARES unit, thinking we were safe, and this will never happen again. There's nothing in place that will stop this violence from happening to me over and over again. This only perpetuates it, allows people to call when they are angry and potentially destroy people's lives. As I talk to you right now, and this is public, I am putting myself at more risk for calls and surveillance. Even with the safety transfer, my family is not safe from the violent relationship the DOE has with ACS. As a parent who is currently participating in the strike for remote, ACS is also always used as a tactic for coercion to bring my children into the school. I present well. I'm married, I have 3 degrees, but I'm still a black woman with black children that no one cares about. If this happens to me, what happens to the parents who feel they can't speak up? Through all of this, I've lost 20 pounds. There's a physical toll, a mental toll, and a trust has been broken. I will never trust the DOE with the safety of my children, as they are in bed with ACS, using our children as collateral. We need change. We need to support the Miranda Rights and Child Welfare and Confidential Reporting Bill presented today to end this cycle of violence. I was also told by that ACS worker that if I had her white counterpart as my ACS caseworker, that I would have scared him. What about me presents as scary? Because I know my rights, and I know that I wouldn't allow anyone to come into my home and speak to my children in the manner in which they do. So again, I implore you to look at this from a point of view of impacted parents and what actually happens beyond the laws and the things that are written on paper.
So, yeah, you can clap for that. Ms. Hackett, thank you for your testimony. And before I get to the other parents who are going to be testifying, I just want to say to you, so I'm the lead sponsor of the confidential reporting bill, because I understand. So you heard the commissioner of ACS on the record say today, we don't get to choose who we investigate. He doesn't. It's by law. It's by statute. So there is a problem with racism before it even gets to the point of ACS. There's a triggering event, which is harassment. A harassing call took place for you. I am of the same opinion that some of my colleagues who I'm working with, that anonymous reporting is not something that should be part of the child welfare system. We've seen evidence in other states where you've gotten away from an anonymous reporting system, and the number of cases hasn't got up, and kids' safety has not been put in jeopardy. So, yeah, I'm going to be looking with my colleagues to be pushing for that bill. It's not an easy lift, but we'll be fighting for that bill because I think it's the right thing to do, because nobody should be using ACS or the threat of withdrawal or removal from your kid to punish somebody. By the way, it's not just schools. It's boyfriends. It's girlfriends. It's the guy who I stepped on the street on the subway. Whoever it is, this is a mechanism where if you are malicious, you can rip someone's life apart. And so that's just bad in and of itself. But for me, from a policy level, and I want to get this on the record too before I let you guys continue, the fact that New York State and government in general is engaged in separating parents from families, and I get that. I understand if there's extreme circumstances, but removing a parent from their kid is a trauma. It's a childhood trauma. It's one of those events that has the potential to have that kid's life doomed or defined. So we railed against it when, the kids coming across the border were separated from their families. And we rail against it when kids are locked up when they're really young. And we rail against, but yet we continue to keep the practice going. We've got to do everything we can to make sure that we're not unjustly or unfairly getting kids away from their parents. That's a trauma that ruins lives. It hurts the families and it hurts the kids. So I will be pushing that bill, and your testimony was very helpful today.
Thank you. And I just want to say one other thing is that even with all the anti-bias trainings and all the D&I, there are still staff members and teachers that are advising other teachers when they have difficult students to actually call ACS.
Yeah.
So your support of that bill will help mitigate that, but all the anti-bias trainings in the world
I got you.
doesn't mitigate what actually is happening in the school system, and ACS is giving the staff members and the DOE permission to just violate families over and over again.
Okay, so I appreciate that. Let me just, I mentioned this with the commissioner, but I just want to get this on the record. So I've been hearing from parents all across the state that if they have I mentioned this earlier, a reasonable health objection to sending their kids to school, they shouldn't be threatened by ACS, right? Simple as that. But I've been hearing that that's happening. We called ACS. They're coming out with rules so we can disseminate to our colleagues, to you, to any of our friends to make sure that that's not happening. If it's happening, you'll let us know, but that should not be happening.
It's happening. It's happened to me.
I believe it.
I'm removing my kids from the Department of Education and homeschooling them because of that threat.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony here today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.